So it's been a while.
It has.
Say, do you think? Yeah, this might not be your cup of tea.
Who is Alana Banks?
Alana Banks is. That's a great question. I saw that question on the list and I said, I know what I'm going to say on this question. But now, Alana Banks is, I want to say, a businesswoman,
Mm-hmm.
student, a daughter, um, an activist, um, and most importantly, a human, a
Right.
human being.
And I know that I just learned it this year teaching at Shy Arts about pronouns. I had no idea what that meant. When somebody asked me about my pronoun, I was like, huh? I mean, I knew what a pronoun was, but tell if you don't mind, telling the world of the people, like, what are your pronouns?
Sure. My predominant pronouns are she, her, but around people who have known me previously, I allow them to use they, them. So
And can you explain?
anything but
I'm sorry, go ahead.
anything but he.
Right, right. And with that being said, how do you, I mean, I know that's a pronoun, but how do you identify Alana Banks? Because I know there's who you are and what you are and what the person expects you to be or the world expects you to be. But how do you identify, how do you identify?
I identify as a Black trans woman of color. I guess Black and of color are the same thing. But a Black trans woman is who I identify. People ask me all the time because I do identify as a woman, but I just put the trans on there to basically not, it's been a long time coming, I'll say that. And so I don't want to downplay my experiences at all. So I keep the trans on there as just a reminder of where I came from on this journey to finding who I am.
And that's awesome. And first and foremost, I want to commend you and congratulate you for not only speaking your truth, but being so confident about it and sharing information. And I can only imagine, Alana, the struggles you've been through, being a Black woman, and also the struggles of transitioning. And I guess that was where my curiosity, started at with this all, because I'm not only curious, I want to educate myself about the transitioning and the journey. As I mentioned before, I started watching. It's called Pose. I don't know, for some reason I keep on calling it Pose, but it's Pose.
Yeah,
Which is my first transgender TV series I've ever watched, and I must say it was some really good writing,
yeah,
really good acting, and I learned so much about it, and I'm completely thankful about it. But we could talk about that later on. Do you mind, telling, what what are your interests and your occupations?
sure. So if you know me personally, you know that I wear many hats. I can never sit down in one place for too long. But as of now, I am a paralegal. I started my own paralegal support firm. I've dabbled in the entertainment business a little bit. Um, I have a passion for English, actually, so I've been thinking about teaching English abroad. So that's something I'm kind of working out the kinks to now. Um, I really feel like I'm a Renaissance woman. There's no one thing that I can just be great at. I feel like I'm great at a lot of different things. So I just try to embrace that. It used to weigh on me a lot. Now I just kind of embrace it.
And with that being said, what was the initial inspiration, for, because I know you asked me, what inspired you as a child to want to be who you are today? Was it someone that was you know, a role model, or, like what inspired you to have that, not only that confidence, but you able to like, have these different hats? I'm just curious as to know that.
I would say, you know my family. So
I sure do.
my family is comprised of very confident women, women who have been through just as much, if not more, as I've been through. So, for example, my great grandma, she was like my rock, really. She was very sensitive with me. I always felt like she knew what was going on, but she just never really wanted to acknowledge it, which is okay. Um, but my mom as well. My mom has played a very big role in my life, just basically in regards to professionality. Everything I know I've learned from my mom.
Wow.
Um, and so emotionally is where it comes in. My grandma is the one who had to build me emotionally, so I credit her for that. I credit her for my confidence.
I figure that, and speaking on that, Alana, I mean, I remember each Sunday, um, you committing to your role, and I what I loved about it was, well, first and foremost, I'll tell you this: I love the way that you and your sister interacted, because it seemed like of course, you were the older sibling, but what I loved about it is that you were very quiet, but you committed to your role as an usher, and you did it well. And as as a young child, I saw that. I was like, she's going to grow up and do great, great, great things, because, but not only of her family, but just the fact that it seems to be in her. And I wanted to ask you about that, your role at the church. We'll talk about the church here in a second. How did that role, being an usher,
Sure.
impact you in your daily walk as a professional?
It meant the world to me. I am a Leo. August 6th is my birthday. So we're kind of naturally, I came out the womb 2 months early. So I kind of like to think that, I'm a self starter, I'm a leader. And so that was something, I don't want to say it was a power thing, but being the usher, that I felt a lot of responsibility. Also, at the time, my grandma was the president of the usher board, the senior usher board.
Right.
So I've always felt connected to her in that. So I've always taken it very seriously.
That is awesome. And just going into, transitioning to, your first memories of gender identity. Um, did you face any conflicts of being an usher, but then also knowing that, your gender identity was something that you had conflicts within the church? And did the church give you any angst or any shame or any, you know, uh, any shame or guilt of wanting to, come into this gender identity? Like, what were your experiences of how the church perceived you, even though that they may have not known? Or like, I just want to get to the root of that. When it comes to the church, how did that affect you?
Yeah, yeah. So it it was a little tough. So I was raised by women predominantly. So the men in my life were not. They were present, but they were never really. I don't think that no one ever worried that I would give up my manhood. You know what I mean? No one ever expected that, like you said. So um, it goes back to my grandma. Like seeing her every morning, her and my mom, like they would take hours every Sunday morning getting ready, perfume, pearls, hair, like make like that was something that I felt left out of. And I could not understand at the time why I could not do those things. My grandma's putting on this whole like suit skirt, and I'm like, okay, where's my suit skirt? Where's my so that's when I first noticed that okay, something's going on here. There was an incident. It was when I decided to do the usher board and the junior choir at the same time. I had an incident the night before Saturday night before service or something, and I was experimenting with razors, and I was trying to give myself a little arch, and I ended up taking the whole eyebrow off completely.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I did not want to go to church, and my mom, she let everybody know what happened, and I'm not sure if I should say who said it, but there was someone who approached me and was just like, and I'm in like the fourth or fifth grade at this time. And they're just like, "You're not gay, are you?"
Mm,
And because I didn't tell them that I was arching my brow. I told them it was just an accident. I didn't say I was arching my brow.
right.
But just based off that question, "You're not gay, are you?" I still think about that now. Like, I still think about how that was my first introduction to, if you come out as who you are, you may not be welcome.
Wow. Yeah.
That
And
it was very nerve-wracking.
I bet it was very nerve wracking. And I'll just show you my experience because, I still consider myself a Christian. However, I just don't believe in organized religion. I don't believe in the fact that, you know, uh, you organize a way to either control or dictate how someone should govern themselves. I also don't believe in putting shame and guilt into people by using God's word. I don't think that it is healthy. And I know for me, in my experience, I remember when I was a kid, I feared Alana daily that I was going to go to hell, even though that I wasn't necessarily doing that. I was just being a kid, but it's that component, that piece of if you do something bad, then God is going to inflict pain on you, and that's what happened in my mind. And in my mind, it was justified because it's like, well, He created this world, and so if I mess up, this is my punishment. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going to mention any names or any churches or anything like that. But as I grew older into being an adult man, I realized how much trauma is infused sometimes in churches, and how some churches do have children's church and they have the adult church. I think you and I was raised in the traditional church, so there really wasn't like I think when I left, I think maybe it started to happen a little bit more, but I just know growing up, there was no discernment. It was everybody was in the same, church, in the same congregation. And the reason why I'm speaking on that is because did you feel any guilt or any shame for transitioning because of what you thought individuals from the church would, how they would perceive or view you?
Oh, yes, definitely. So I still have aspirations to run for a public office. And so when I decided, that's actually the deciding factor that's why I held it off for so long. I felt that I'm not going to be able, no one's going to vote for me as an openly Black trans woman. I felt like that was something that was going to, my identity was going to be a hindrance, is what I felt like. But I'm sorry, I lost where I was going with that one.
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry.
I just asked if do you feel that the church or any spiritual organization you've ever dealt with, do you feel that it has ever instilled guilt or shame for you being who you are? Do you feel that?
Definitely.
Yeah, I guess it's my question.
Yeah, definitely. So I was baptized at age 8. Um, and when my mom was kind of explaining the whole baptism process to me, it seemed like you said, it scared me. It felt like anything I did wrong, God's going to be like, okay, hell, you're going to hell. So I will say that was being baptized at an early age definitely made me feel not so, I don't want to say that I couldn't come out, but that if I did come out, I would have to run away and hide or something
Mm,
like that.
right.
It definitely brought a lot of anxiety and stress to me.
Hmm. Wow. And I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I guess because in my mind, church is supposed to be a place where we get healing, right? We're supposed to get some healing, some spiritual healing. And what the component, like I mentioned before, sometimes I have a disagreement on is that sometimes I get the feeling that, you know, it's that trauma relationship, that trauma bounding relationship where you go and you feel this guilt and shame, and then you leave feeling like, you know, there's gonna be a new day, but then you come back to that guilt and shame every single week. And I'm not saying that's the component. It's not supposed to be that way. But as a child, that's just how I saw individuals who were struggling, and they would, you know, come to church. And I'm glad that they came to church to be, you know, to have this safe space. But at times I also wonder, you know, can we communicate a little bit better in our church organizations to our people about therapy, or about self-care, or just the message that, you know, God is not trying to inflict pain on you. If anything, he's trying to hook you up, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, with that being said, what are what what could the church do much better in regards to accepting not only young people's views, but but what advice would you give to a church, who may be closed-minded of opening up not only their doors, but just opening up their hearts and communicating to those who have transition and trans people? Like, what advice would you give them to help communicate better to an individual who may be trans?
I would say the first thing that comes to mind is not. So we always talk about how when it comes to homosexuality or gender variance, that you should never stray away from the traditional norm. And I think the first place to start is to, first of all, teach that, you know, no matter what the sin is, you know, being a sinner in general can um, send you to hell, basically. You know, it's not that being gay or trans is going to be more of a sin than committing murder or any other commandment. You know what I mean? I think that's the first thing. People always assume that, you know, being gay, that's just the worst. You're going to the deepest, darkest pit of hell because you're gay. And then, you know, all the other sins for that kind of just don't matter. And that was something I noticed kind of early on. Out of all the sins, it's like the homosexuality is the part that just kind of stick to. Um,
Right.
so that was something that's been the main thing. But in addition to that, say, kind of like you said, keeping an open mind. I think a lot of churches are concerned about their image. And for some churches, their image is what brings in their funding. You know? So I
Right.
kind of understood it from that point. I think a lot of churches, I think that's what churches are concerned with their image. They don't want to make it seem as if they're um, condoning it or suggesting it. You know? But that's completely different from accepting it. I tell people that all the time. Just because you're accepting it does not exactly mean that you're enforcing it or that you're saying that this is the standard. So um, that's one thing. And lastly, I would say to churches to work with children, just because children are uh, racism, homophobia, that kind of stuff is not. You're not born that way. That kind of hatred is taught, I feel. So I think it's important that we talk about these issues with children. People always say leave the kids out of it, but I feel like kids, you know, we kind of grow up seeing things and that we see it's sometimes our reality. So I think that's very important to structure the minds of the younger people.
You laid that out so beautifully.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was you articulate that very, very well, and I agree with you. And I have a special heart for the youth because I believe that the youth is not only the future. I mean, it's our responsibilities from the generation that's after them. I'm sorry, before them, to show them the way. And that's the reason why I asked that question. And, you know, because specifically, you know, just taking it out of the church construct, we as individuals, at least in my opinion, I believe that it is our responsibility, our civil responsibility, to not only show the way, but educate and uplift the children, because they are literally looking up to us. And so that's why I asked you the question and the advice for the church piece of like, what can they do, you know, in a better way of not only, like you said, just accepting, but what initiatives, what programs are you creating to accept people for who they are? Because if we get down to the bare minimum of it, Jesus loved all, God loves
Right.
all. And so if love is what we're talking about, we have to love people for who they are and where they are. And we have the decision to either be in their lives or not. We can love from a distance, or we can make a stance, and or we could take the leap of faith to be able to connect and have conversations to help that individual get closer to um, you know, the plan, right? So
Right.
enough about the church. Let's transition to something else. And and once again, with this whole interview, you know, the topics I'm talking about are things that, like, I'm trying to educate myself on as well. So, what effects have the recent killings of Black men and women from police brutality had have on your mental stability, specifically when it comes to, you know, being a Black woman, but also being a Black trans woman? How has that affected you?
It is very complicated. You're actually the first person I explain this to. So for me, so prior to transitioning, I've always felt more comfortable around the police as queer or trans versus being a Black man. I feel like it's easier for me to be around police as a trans woman because, so like from my experiences in Decatur, with police officers, if I ever get pulled over for anything, it's like they just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to search me. They don't want to deal with it. If there's no women police officers, they just let me go, honestly. And I think that's just because they don't want they don't want anyone to assume that there's any homophobia going on, even though there may be. I've heard a lot of cases where there is, but I've never been in a situation with the police where I have to be fearful because of who I am. On the other hand, when it comes to when I identified as a Black, that was a different story. That's where I feel like it kind of gave me my experiences as a Black man. It kind of gave me a bit of caution. I still, to this day, if I see a police officer, it's kind of, and I think that's all of us at this point. When you see a police officer, it's very, your nerves get very tense. You're just looking to make sure you're doing everything right while driving. With the recent events, it just makes me a bit more, for one, cautious. You know, I don't, you know, luckily I work third shift, so I try not to be out late at night, you know, just hanging out or whatever. I kind of got, I don't need to hang out, but I kind of try to stay out of the way, first of all. But it is very, it makes me very anxious, just even talking about it. But with the recent killings, back to the question, with the recent killings, it does make me feel like we just have more work to do, not only as a community, but as a nation, you know, as America, the United States of America, really have a lot of work to do. In regards to law enforcement and the justice system, and this is nothing new, of course.
Right.
This is like this since the beginning. And so that's what kind of frustrates me. And I feel like moving forward a little bit. Some people don't think that we're moving forward as quickly as we should. But for example, just with the taking down of the statues, several police departments being defunded, and not to say that we're just wiping away their budgets. That's not what defunding means. Just to get that out there. But just I don't know. It makes me more aware of my surroundings, and it also makes me more aware of others, the surroundings of others. I saw a post one day where, or I don't know, actually you may have seen it. WND might have covered maybe a week ago when there was some sort of standoff between suspects and the police in one of the predominantly Black areas in Decatur. For me, like people are at the point now where they see if they see Black people pulled over, they're going to pull over as well, just to let the police know that okay, we're watching you. You know, you're basically there letting that person know who's being pursued that, you know, no matter what happens, we're there. And I think that's very commendable, because we hear about citizens arrests all the time,
Right.
but we never have, I feel like there is no check or balance for the police department.
Right. Right.
So there is no check or balance. And I feel like lately we've been slowly holding law enforcement more accountable for their irresponsible actions. But like, there's so much, there's a long way to go. But I think we've come a long way so far.
And yeah, I mean, just like what you mentioned, that's such a great point when you mentioned that, we have had that, enforcement from the police officers through America. But you're right. And in most times we don't see a lot. I know in my lifetime, I didn't see a lot of situations or occurrences where police officers had to, take the responsibility, to own up to their actions as well. And so I'm glad you said that piece, and I'm glad that we are coming to this place where we are holding them accountable and making them realize of the actions that they have, put on a community of people, specifically Black people. And that one piece that you mentioned that I definitely share with you as well is that sentiment of being in the car. And like, even to this day, like I can be playing music in my car loud with the windows up. Right. And for some reason, when a cop comes, I turn it down, or, I try to be as, PC as I can. But that body response piece is what I'm learning in therapy, because I'm in therapy right now. I'm actually, I'm in therapy. I'm in group therapy every week with the psychotherapist, and then I have my own personal therapist that I see biweekly. And one thing that I'm learning right now, Elena, is about body responses, and the fact that when you are around individuals, and if your body feels tense, or if your body feels just a discomforting feeling, that's a sign that something isn't right, because your body doesn't lie, right? Your body doesn't lie. Your body tells us God created us, in the image of Him. That our bodies tell us things, and I don't like the fact that years as Black people, that our body response to police members are to be tense, when they are supposed to be the ones who are supposed to help us. They are supposed to be the inspirators in our communities instead of the antagonist, right? And so thank you for sharing that, because I I did not even know that, an individual would experience that. It's like, well, when I do get pulled over, I face two things: discrimination, and then they're scared to do X, Y, and Z because of my identity. Which leads me to my next question. How do you feel Black trans people are treated by non-POC or white people? And I want to be clear, when I say non-POC, someone else asked me this on one of my Facebook posts. Well, Taylor, why can't you just say white people? Well, for me, non-POC covers all whiteness, because for an example, an individual who may be Jewish may not see themselves as white. They may not.
Right.
Someone who is Ukrainian may not see themselves as white, but Ukrainian. And so I use non-POC not because I'm trying to, walk the fence. It's, for me, I'm covering the full spectrum of whiteness when I say non-POC, a person who does not have color. So how are Black trans people treated by non-POC people?
For me, I feel like, and this is just from my personal experiences, it's always 50-50. It's always hit or miss. If it's a hit, there are people who are just overly sympathetic. They want to know how they can help. They want you to teach them every part of the dictionary. They want you to teach them about sexual orientation, gender identity, the whole nine yards. Or, on the other hand, they just don't want any parts to do with you at all. And so I've had to experience both situations. I've even lost that. I've had a few white friends who I don't even, associate with anymore, because them and their parents did not agree with, I guess, how I live my life. So it's pretty complicated.
Right.
It is what it is.
And on the flip side of that, how have black people treated you as a woman who's transitioning?
Um, to be honest, okay, I'm gonna be honest. It
Yeah,
hasn't been the best at all. It has not been the best. I get the best reaction from other Black um, trans or queer people, you know. But even within our community, we still face adversity, you know. There's a lot of people, like, I'm Facebook friends with a lot of people from my hometown, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, Black people, it's just very, they still kind of think that homosexuality is something that um, was something that the colonizers enforced on us. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Which that's just very ignorant. That's not true. I mean, it did happen. I will say it did happen. We know about the whole butt breaking and all that. That is true. However, that was not the first instance of homosexuality. Um, but I feel like with Black people, I don't know. I think with men particularly, we're more fragile with Black men than anything. I feel like when a Black man sacrifices his manhood without it being taken from him, when he willingly sacrifices his manhood, I feel like the community goes into a frenzy. Versus where, say, a woman wants to transition to male, or a lesbian woman who prefers men's clothing. You know, we kind of accept that a little bit more versus men who go the feminine route. You know what I mean? So that kind of double standard has always been there for me. Um, Another thing, I feel that African Americans are more violent. I've learned recently, actually, that the response to queer and trans people is always, you know, we're going to beat them up, we're going to shoot them. You know, the comments that I see are very disturbing, and I rarely see those type of comments from non-POC. And I feel like that's what disturbs me the most, because I even had to deal with that my whole life. You know, I've always been, I think I've always stuck out my whole life. I feel like I never really fit into any friend groups or like stereotypes. Like I've just kind of always been me, and I feel like that's why I am who I am. But growing up, like I don't know, I would always get teased before I even knew what femininity was. I knew that, you know, I possessed it, but I would always get teased and bullied over it, and I would never understand it. But the more I grow up, it's like back to the church. You know, we are teaching our kids, you know, that's bad. You're not going to get anywhere in life. People aren't going to want you. They're not going to accept you. I don't know. We're just faced with all this, with all these negative connotations, and it really has effects on the way we think and live.
And thank you for sharing that. Because I will agree with you. I saw it as a kid. I mean, I see it now. And let me ask you two questions. Do you think that the aggression from black people when it comes to black trans people, specifically when it comes to black men or black women, but I want to focus on black men. Um, do you think that there's any connection of white supremacy to the fact that they are aggressive because masculinity in the black community? I'm formulating this question myself, because
Yeah,
black because masculinity in the black community is how we build our equity, which means what we balance in ourselves. We're adding value to ourselves. Do you think that 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 value piece of being masculine is all that we have? So when we see someone transitioning, it we go into this psychological warfare of us being invalidated, and so we tend to dismiss instead of trying to connect. And I'm just curious if any white supremacy has any connection to it, because I'm trying to get to the bottom of why black men um, discriminate against black trans people I mean, all humankinds have done that, but from your personal story, what I've heard from others is that it's more prominent in black men versus either a white man or a white woman. And I'm just curious as to what do you think it is? Because I'm curious is it white supremacy? Is it because lack of knowledge? Is it lack of resources? Is it because the environment? Not all black men live in, but is it an environmental reason why? I'm curious as to know from you, why do you think that black men are more aggressive than other races in that regard when it
Well,
comes to black trans people?
yeah. Well, first of all, I think all those things that you mentioned, they all play a part in this. But what sticks out to me is, first of all, black women. So a lot of us, I won't say many or all of us, but a lot of us are raised without fathers. And so we have our mothers who are teaching us how to be men, you know. So that was the case for me. My mom basically handled everything when it came to me. So I think the main thing is that image. I don't know what it is. I feel like black men always want to keep this, and I won't say all black men, I won't generalize,
Right.
but some black men, they, I don't know, they want to keep this hard shell. They want to keep this hard image. And I think it does kind of go back to white supremacy because we hear all the time where people have come out and say that, the black community treats the LGBT community the same way that the black community is being treated by the white community. So I agree with that wholeheartedly because it's definitely true. I feel like there's been times where, people say that black people um, they can't be oppressors because we have no institutional power. But I know I said recently that, institutional power has nothing to do with the power that we have amongst ourselves in our community.
Right.
So I think that it's just, we have some healing to do, honestly. Another thing is we kind of equate straight men who, and this has to do with the trans murders. We sometimes equate straight men who are interested in transgender women, call them gay men. And that's not the case. You can be a heterosexual cisgender, and cisgender means that you're comfortable gender that you were given at birth. You can be a heterosexual cisgender person and still be attracted to or interested in trans women without the fear of being labeled as gay. And I think that's one thing there. Black men are kind of closed minded when it comes to the queer community because if you show any acceptance towards it, people are going to assume that that's what you are.
Right.
And so I keep an open mind and I can kind of sympathize with that a little bit because before I knew what was going on, it would kill me that people would make those accusations before I would even know, what was going on myself. So
Right.
I think our image and our overall lifestyle plays a big part in that.
Well, what a beautiful answer that you just, or that statement that you made, because I'm pretty sure you have seen in your community other black trans people who may even deem um, a heterosexual male to be gay if they are interested in trans. But I like the fact that you have this positioning where, well, no, I don't believe that. They just are into women. I'm a woman, right?
Right. Just
Um,
a different kind of woman. That's what I tell
yeah,
people.
yeah. And so, yeah, oh, man, that was a light bulb for me, because I think for me, I was just, I, I don't know, like I was confused with, if someone was interested, what does that mean for them if they knew at birth the individual was a different gender, but they transitioned. But I thank you for clarifying that, or just having that vantage point. I think that's that's a beautiful vantage point to share with individuals who might be struggling, because there's some men out there who might be struggling with the fact that it's not a fetish for them, that maybe it is that they're just interested and attracted to this woman, and that they probably have a lot of shame and guilt because of their struggling with their sexuality themselves. So thank you for sharing that piece, because I mean, you just educated me. I didn't, I didn't have a viewpoint on it as much, but I've always was curious as to why there are some men who will go and be with a trans, woman, or be with the woman, right? So
Right.
with that being said, I would like to transition into like a more light topic, going back to the Pose TV series, which is a really, really great series. If individuals have not seen it, they should definitely check it out. Do not let your reservations, do not let your inner, discrimination, from those remove you from this TV series. I have learned a lot. And it's interesting because it's based on the year I was born. I'm not going to say when I was born, but it's based in the year I was born. So
I know.
I had a connection to it. So like as I told you before, I'm a bit ignorant, when it comes to the struggles of trans people. And like I said, I was just watching Pose, and the writing, like I said, is really good. How do you feel about this TV series, and who is responsible for bringing awareness to the injustice of trans people? Who is the individual that you can educate me on this individual right here? It was the precursor to what we see today, or this was the role model in the community? But the first question is, how do you feel about the TV show? And then the second question is, who is responsible for bringing trans lives matters, Black trans lives matters to life?
Sure. So, I love the TV show. It's in my 25 years of existence, it's like one of my favorite shows. And I think it's not just because I identify the same way as they do. I think it's because whether you're gay, straight, cis, or trans, like it's a learning experience. Like you said, it's a learning experience for all of us. It kind of puts a light on the adversities that we faced for all these years and that we still face even to this day. Um, And your second question was, sorry.
I know the second question.
Your second question.
Yeah, is it who's because I'm not sure who's responsible. Is there like a huge leader in the Black trans community who's brought this to light?
I would say there's no one huge leader. I will say though that the Black and Latino trans community as a whole is who are responsible for um, shining the light on the issues that we face.
Wow.
So it's the same thing with when it comes to race. So when it comes to white or non-POC, um, LGBT identifying folks, us Black queer folks, we still have to worry about those. But we're not accepted with white queers. You know what I mean? So we're still dealing with racism anywhere we go. I'm looking at Atlanta right now, and it's still, even for just little Atlanta, Atlanta is still kind of segregated when it comes to even LGBT culture. So Pose, in a way, kind of captured that, actually, what we face within our own community and what we're facing, just like you guys are too,
Right.
So I would say there is no one person. I can say that it did start with Marsha P. Johnson. Marsha P. Johnson was basically the most crucial part of the 1969 Stonewall riots in New York City. And that is what gives us Pride Month every month. It happened in June. And it just basically put the microscope on how it was the police who were, causing most of the destruction back then. Police would go into, I hate to go back to police, but police would go into these queer spaces and just cause trouble. You know what I mean? And that's how the riots started. And these riots were started by inner city, Black, brown, trans, and gender variant people. And I think a lot of times, there was a colleague of mine who mentioned that. So when we passed the marriage equality laws a few years ago, a friend of mine stated that it's like the white gays got their marriage equality and left the rest of us behind. It's like all that we were fighting for was marriage equality. There's some of us are still fighting to live. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
right.
there's some of us who can't even go to the doctor's office without being discriminated against. We can't even go into public without being discriminated against. So that's why I enjoy Pose. I love Pose, and I won't credit just one person, but I will say Marsha is a great place to start. Marsha P. Johnson.
Oh yeah, once again, you articulated that perfectly. Thank you so much. And I agree with you with any movement. There's never one person, but it could be an individual who just had more influence on the culture to bring the injustice to light. Two more questions regarding to the Pose TV series that I just never heard of. Can you explain houses to me in the trans LGBTQ A plus community, and then also can you explain mother to me in the trans LGBTQ A plus community? And it's so interesting. With the mother component, I really love Lady Gaga. Like I love her artistic approach. And just as an artist, I'm an artist. I really, really just respect her. And I know her fans called her mother, and I never knew what that meant. I never knew what that meant. So can you just explain what houses and a mother means in the trans and LGBTQ A plus community?
Sure. So your house is your chosen family. A lot of us are, excluded from our families once we come out or are outed as gay or trans. So we mostly see it in bigger cities, places like Decatur, not really existing there, but the bigger metropolitan cities. So it's basically your chosen family, the family that they may have pulled you in off the street. You were homeless. They may feed you, they clothe you. And we do have balls. Houses do have balls, and that's just basically a place to go for queer people of color specifically to be themselves and rejoice in themselves. You know, so your mother is the leader of the house. Mother and father. Sometimes there are fathers as
Mm.
well. And mothers are typically trans women. Um, Typically, trans women are mothers, fathers, gay men. And so it's basically just your chosen family. A lot of us are picked and chosen into these houses. A lot of us just go searching for these houses. So they're everywhere. They've been around. And it's basically a place for you to have family for those of us who weren't exactly able to be ourselves with the family that we were born into. And when you mentioned Lady Gaga, she is one of my favorites as well because she's kind of like a modern day drag queen in a sense,
Hmm.
because her theatrics are always over the top. Say Nicki Minaj too, if you want to go that far. But
Right.
her theatrics are over the top, and I think drag and the ballroom culture itself is basically a way for you to live this fantasy that you wouldn't be able to live um, in regular life.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's what I'm learning. Um, with this TV series. My and thank you for sharing that. My question for you though, one piece I did not like about the the balls, and correct me if I have some misunderstandings about it. I didn't like the fact when I watched the TV series that for those trans people who may not have like the most fashion neat fashion styles, it came off very judgmental when someone would walk down the aisle and they didn't have the best. And so my mind went to this: if they're already feeling invalidated in the outside world, when they come to this ball and they don't have the proper attire that gets them the trophy, what does that do to an individual when they go back into you know that's reality, but what happens to an individual when they go back into the world where the world is invalidating them? And I wanted to get your viewpoint of do what is the culture of assessing and judging people in a ball, and how has it affected people when they didn't either win the trophy or they were looked down upon because their attire and their whole ensemble and ambiance wasn't you know accepted.
right. So thank you for that question because it actually I've identified with that in the past. It seems that Okay, so if we put the microscope within ourselves, the Black queer community, we judge each other. So what you're describing sounds like what they call shade. So it's like someone who may not be in their best. I don't know. I don't agree with it honestly. No, we don't have these New York big city, mentalities. But I think I do understand what you're saying, and that's something that we have to work on as our own community as well. We tend to be more materialistic with things. Who has the most money? Who has the best body? Who has the most money? You know, um, who looks the best, or in the trans community, who can pass as a biological female. And it is kind of disappointing that we have to judge each other based on our appearance. But I will say, that's kind of the environment that the balls are. It's brutal. Everyone wants to, as they say, snatch the trophy. Everyone wants to be the it girl, the it person. And so I think sometimes that the competition can get better of us sometimes. And I think that's where you start to see a lot of that hostility towards one another.
Right.
Um, it does exist because, just like black on black crime, it exists. We're not perfect people, but I do think that we tend to let the competition and the stresses of life get to us. And I think that's where that stems from.
And I can only imagine, the root of, and what I loved about Pose is that I forgot his name, the guy who was like pretty much the MC when he in his reality outside of the ball, you got to see him for just being who he truly was. And I'm talking about the gay man. I'm not talking to him because I'm also too. It's been a journey for me to make sure I correct myself when I had the pronouns, but specifically the gay man who was the MC. We got to see how his life looked outside of the ball, and honestly he was just regular, and then he ended up getting AIDS, and so but it was but I guess my observation is like, is the root of the judgment based off the things that you don't have. So when you go to the ball, you judge people because it might make you feel better, because in the world you don't feel better, so it feels good when you go to the ball to judge because now you have the power. That's what I was thinking, because I think they did an excellent job of showing the transparency between, the ball life and then the work life that they have, and then the young man who was the dance student, and the realities that he faced in there. So I guess I just wanted to bring that question up because when I saw that, I was like, oh, I wish they wouldn't have talked about her so much, because she probably come from humble beginnings, and maybe she didn't have any, but then you saw that she went and got butt injections to prove herself at this ball for a trophy, which is a materialistic thing. So but I think that we see that a lot in life. I think that one thing that I'm learning, Elena, is that what I saw in the ball culture is what actually happens in the real world, right? And I wonder if if the real world was more accepting of individuals, would the ball culture have this like moralistic judgment and life alienating judgment on others? I was thinking about that because it's like, wow, I wonder if the ball culture, when it comes to assessing people, are they learning this from the world and white supremacy, right? So I'm sorry, I got super like
Oh yeah, I'm
right.
here for it.
But do you have any feelings about that, about what I just said, or?
Yeah, so one thing for sure that I do know. So in ballroom culture, it's like the message was always love. Like, even though there was always words being exchanged, the purpose of it was, there was never going to be any fighting. So just like breakdancing. So rather than, fighting and using weapons and all these things, you were going to compete against the person who has beef with you on the ballroom floor. You know what I mean? And so sometimes that's where the reads will come out, the shade. That's where it gets a little bit brutal because that's your way of combating what you're going through in society. And sometimes I don't always agree with it just because I'm the type of person where I feel like we all need to be friends, we all need to be, need to love each other, I'm that type of person. But I do kind of understand, like I said, the competition definitely in that sense. I'm not in ballroom right now, but I have friends who are, and so I hear it can be pretty brutal.
Right, right. Yeah, but thank you for sharing that information for me, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. We're gonna be wrapping up here soon. I know I promised you up until noon. I do have some other questions. I guess my next question for you, when it just comes to resources, what resources are there for those like myself who aren't as knowledgeable of the history of trans people? Where are some resources that we can get more information? I know for me, Pose was like a TV series, like, documentary for me. But, for those who want to learn more about trans people, where can they go to get that information?
Definitely film and television, like we stated. Um, Literature and poetry. That's something I'm into now. The Harlem Renaissance is one of my favorite periods of history. And that's where we have a lot of intellectual queer people. And so that's what really stuck out to me. Um, Another source, so the Human Rights Campaign, they do a great job. They're also called HRC for short. They do a great job of educating allies and creating stronger allies. So I definitely recommend them as um, another thing. So with the Black community specifically, I would tell the Black community to go back and look at the Civil Rights Movement. So we get people like Byron Rustin, who I talk about all the time. Byron Rustin is the man who organized the March on Washington, where Dr. King gave his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. But Byron Rustin was asked to sit out of the spotlight because he was an openly Black man. So I feel like really relearning, I hate to say it, but we really have to relearn everything that we were not taught in the first place, about acceptance, about self-love, about the community as a whole. Yeah, it's like we're all a part of this community, but we're not all exactly the same. And that if you can understand that, if you can realize that, I feel like that's a good place to start. Just being open-minded is a good place to start. So
I like that, being open-minded. Like, yeah, that is the beginning. You have to open up your mind. With that being said, how do you what is your message as a woman, and what does womanhood mean to you after this journey and transitioning? What does womanhood mean for you?
for me, womanhood is my entire existence. So I feel very connected with it. In my eyes, I have always been a woman my whole life. I was born a woman. Yeah, it's me. But for me, womanhood is just being able to own my identity, own my sexuality, own being the outspoken one in the room. I was also raised to, shut up, don't out, just I kind of feel like I was raised as a woman. I was kind of raised to be conservative. And so for me, stepping into womanhood has given me basically a voice of who I am. And that's just what it means to me. Just basking in all of my feminine glory is but is beneficial for me.
Awesome. And like I said, we're gonna be wrapping up here real soon because I know I promised you an hour. Just a few more things. I don't want this to be, well, Taylor's coming and getting the education and taking. I would like for you to take the time, if there's any businesses that you would like to promote, if there's any events that you have coming up, what's going on in the world of Alana Banks?
So me, I do a lot of legal document creation. Um, I've been helping trans people for over a year now. start the legal process to change their names and gender identity,
Wow.
their birth certificates. I've been doing that for about a year now, officially for about a year. Um, I'm always trying to better myself so that I can better the community. Um, I've been doing a lot of work with the queer community in Decatur, Illinois, specifically, just because that's where we grew up, and so I see a lot of kids. Actually, I won't say kids, more like high school. I guess that's still a kid. I see a lot of kids who are coming into themselves, and they're more accepting of themselves than what we used to be. You know what I mean? I feel like nowadays it's easier
Yeah.
to be queer because we have resources like the internet. Versus back then, if you didn't know anybody gay, it just what I mean, it just wasn't a thing. So I do think that times are changing a little bit. Um, so recently, one thing that I've been working on is creating inclusive policies and procedures at the Decatur Public School District. And that's just protections and procedures on how to handle transgender and gender nonconforming situations and our students. So I've just really been working on grassroots organizations. I'm even here in Atlanta. I've been working with an organization for Black trans women, and we've been kind of halted because of the pandemic. But um, I'm here to better myself so that I can better my.
That is great, Elena. And just two more things before we wrap up. What is the message that you want to send to Black men and Black people? And what is the message you want to send to non-POC people as a Black trans woman?
To the Black community specifically, I would just say that really, until we can unify, as a race, I feel like those who consider themselves to be superior, they're not going to raise us in any higher regard. So, for example, we see white supremacists or those who are prejudiced or racist. They say a lot of things like, "Oh, blacks kill each other every day, so why should we stop?" I mean, they bring up black on black crime and try to justify that. But they bring up the way we go through things in our community and try to justify that as to how we're treated, in public. So for the Black community, I would say it's about really just loving one another. I know that sounds pretty corny, but like it's really real. I think that as a Black community, we need to embrace all Black people. You know what I mean? And that's trans, gay, disabled, old, young. You know what I mean? So. And for the community as a whole, my whole thing has just been stressing that, trans women are women and trans men are men, So some of us choose to identify with the trans. Those of us who are not, ashamed or triggered with our past. So, but regardless, I always tell people, if you see someone who is feminine presenting, aren't sure what their pronouns are, I always say go for they, them. Call them a they, call them a them. If you don't feel comfortable, if you see a trans woman who's noticeably trans, you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel that you can call her a woman, don't call her a man, So
Right.
that's something that I've always been trying to stress to the community, to use they, them pronouns if you're not going to use she, her, or he, him.
And then for the non-POC, what's the message that you would like to send?
Reading is fundamental. Education is key. I think that a lot of non-people of color, a lot of them are just ignorant. I won't call them racist or prejudiced. A lot of people are just ignorant. And so I think it starts with, taking a moment to look into yourself and try to educate yourself. And that goes back to what I said about our kids. Our kids, everything is learned behavior. We're not born prejudiced. You know what I mean? So I feel like it just goes back to, we all need to educate our kids. We all need to look inside ourselves and really just, these are tough times, especially through a pandemic. So it's kind of baffling to me that we have to go through these social injustices at a time like this. So all in all, I would say that everyone needs to just look inside themselves and be open to learning more.
Articulated perfectly. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, DEMAR stands for Dancing in My Room. What does it look like for Alana when you are dancing in your room? And when is the moment you feel the most free?
Um, I feel the most free, I would say, probably in my room. That's the place, your bedroom is a place where you can do anything you want without judgment. And that's something that I've always valued, just privacy, just to be who I am and not have to worry about um, any outside influences. As far as dancing in my room, I am known to give a good twirl. That, I'm not really a twerker, but I can give a twirl in a minute.
Okay, yeah, I see you, Alana. Nice. Well, thank you. I'm sorry. Did you want to say anything else?
No, thank you so much for having me today, and thank you for just being open to learning. I feel like if you share this with others, I feel like this will be a good learning experience, and so I appreciate this opportunity.
And I appreciate you, and I want to tell you that as someone as seeing you as a child, because I mean, we have age difference. Once again, I'm not going to say my age, but one thing I have to give you, Elena, is that you were always respectful. I love the way that you took care of your sister in church, and I just knew I knew in my spirit that you were going to grow up and be and do great things. So first and foremost, I am extremely proud of you. Um, I am so glad that someone from my community is not only being an activist, but you are very articulate. You're a beautiful individual, and you are going to do great things. And I want to thank you for being vulnerable today and taking the time to educate me, because it's really not your job to educate me. Just the same thing. It's not really Black people's jobs to educate non-POC people. They need to hear the information and do the due diligence to be a better individual. Thank you so much for coming and talking.
Hi, I'm Alana Banks, and I just dance in my room.